Alrighty. Welcome back to another thrilling installment of Wordy Wednesdays. I'm your intrepid narrator, Fragath, and today we're going to be reading the final installment of Merchanter's Luck by C.J. Cherry. This is going to be a short one. Let me just make sure I'm at the right spot here. Okay. No, we are. It is going to be quite short indeed. Uh, but that's okay. Did I have something I wanted to talk about after this? I can't remember. Anyway, uh, previously on, um, previously on Merchanter's Luck, we Sandor, Allison Reilly, Neill, Curran, and Dierdre have been piloting the vessel. They had a bit of a tensions came to a head as Curran attempted to beat the computer keys out of Sandy, which did not work. Um, Sandor Kreja basically said, "You can kill me, buddy, and I will not give them to you." Um, he winds up having it out with Allison, and they kind of discuss. Here's where we stand. Uh, here's how little we trust each other, and uh, he winds up actually writing down the keys to comp and then like hiding them, which is fortunate given that they get overtaken by one of the Mazianni vessels. It's Australia, um, which is Edger's ship, and who, if you'll recall, was basically second in command of the Mazianni fleet, um, with Signe Mallory always kind of vying for that position, but never quite getting it. Um, may or may not be implied that Edger and Mazian were lovers in some way. It's not clear. Um, certainly, they had each other's confidence. Um, anyway, their ship is boarded. Now, fortunately for all the Dubliners, um, they have a member of their crew who is experienced in such matters. Sandor himself, who proceeds to be like, okay, Curran, you're with me. Everybody else, you get in spacesuits and hide. Take a gun with you. Um, hide somewhere where they can't find you. In the dark, dark annals of the ship, places where people aren't liable to go, and just sit tight. And so they've been boarded by one of the rider ships, I believe, and they're being taken, I think, to Australia. Um, and Sandor is basically saying, "Oh, we're smugglers. Me and my guy here are smugglers. He's an ex-Dubliner. He used to be on Dublin again, but he got thrown off, and I took him on, and we're smuggling things. Um, in fact, we're smuggling hardware to this station here. I think they're not at Viking, are they? Are they at Fargon? Where are they? One sec here. I can't remember what system they're at. My gut is saying. Oh, it's Venture. It was one of the V's. Oh, I didn't turn that off. That's not helpful. Much better. Sorry about that. Um, I have it on slideshow. A couple of the spare covers that I wasn't able to find an individual use for, or for an individual stream, just because we had so few installments. So they're at Venture, and they're taking components there. And the people who have boarded their ship buy it. So they are now, they are, quote, they were headed for a reckoning of one kind and the other. He felt his own nerves twitch in response to this and that move the ship made under foreign hands, felt a ridiculous anxiety that they might come in rough, as if a scrape was the worst that they had to worry over. It was rough, a jolting into dock that sent a shudder through his soul. He swore for the guard to hear, but not for the man who had done it, whose good will he wanted, if it could be had. So they are well and truly in a tight spot. So with that, let's get rolling. Chapter 16. The silence had gone on for a long time, since dock. Rotation was stopped. The ship had all the attendant sounds of coming and going for a while, and then nothing. Nothing for a very long while. Allison fretted, ate, and drank in the long dark hours because she had reached the point of fatigue, and she had to, not because her stomach had any appetite for it. Neither Dierdre nor Neill offered suggestions, not since the first, when they felt the breakaway from the grapple and knew that they were going in on their own. Now there were machinery sounds missing, like the noise of unloading. That took comp to open the holds and run the internal machinery, and that meant that the Mazianni had not gotten the keys, in some sense or another. Bravo, she tried to think, but the other chance occurred to her, too, that they were dead up there, and the silence continued from the part of the ship that they could hear. She could make a fatal mistake, she reckoned, foul it all up, either by sitting too long or by rushing ahead when she ought to sit still and wait, and take their losses and hope. For what? She thought. Sandor had never reckoned on being hauled into station, docked and occupied at leisure. There was no percentage in waiting for Mazianni to get what they wanted and move a crew in. She conceived a black picture, herself and her crew surviving in the crawlways, waiting a chance when some Mazianni crew would try to take Lucy out, and launching an attack. But they would be debilitated by hunger and inactivity, at disadvantage, underarmed. The Mazianni could crew Lucy with a dozen and tilt the odds impossibly against them. She turned on her suit light. "Going up," she signed to the others, making out only blank faceplates casting back her light in the darkness. But the blank heads nodded after a moment, and Neill patted her ankle with a clumsy glove. They were willing. She moved ahead in the shaft, reckoning that somewhere toward the bow had to be a crawl space leading to main level. They were under the bridge/lounge area, and she recollected the geography of main level, went on the best estimate she had reasoned out over the hours where the access shaft might be. It was slow motion movement, carrying the weight of the suits and slithering forward, trying not to hit metal against metal. She kept the light on, and turned and signed, "Quiet," to the others. Needless caution. They knew. A slip, the banging of a plastic clip or metal coupling against the metal of the shaft might set any occupation wondering. She had to stop from time to time, stopped when she had found what she had hunted for, staring up into the access shaft, disgusted with herself because she was out of breath and doubting that she could make the climb in 1G. She had to, that was all. Could not send Neill up there to get killed because he was strongest. She had to be ready to use the gun and use it right, and none of them had ever fired a gun except in light sensor games. She sucked in a breath and started a slow upward climb, taking the same cautions. The weight of the pack dragged at her arms, threatened to tear her hands from the rungs, bruising bones in her fingers even through the gloves. She took it on her legs as much as possible, a dozen rungs, a few more, and reached the hatch beside the ladder in the shaft. She hooked an elbow around the rungs, almost disjointed by the weight, got the gun from its holster, and hooked the edge of that hand into the unlock lever of the access panel. It hung, took another shove that tore muscles all the way to the groin, gave with a crash, her pickup magnified. The door swung out. A coveralled man had stood up from the number 1 seat, whirling in an adrenaline-stretched instant. She fired, a panic shot, watched in cold disbelief as the man folded and fell. She thrust her leg over and through the access threshold at the corner of the maintenance corridor, stumbled out and fell skidding to one knee as terror, the deck slope, and the weight of the suit combined to take her feet out from under her. She came up with the gun trained wide on the bridge, but there was no one, only the one man, who was not moving. No sign of Curran or Sandor. Nothing. They were gone. Taken somewhere, she thought, struggling to her feet as Dierdre and Neill followed her. She staggered across the deck and stopped, hanging on the arm of the number 1 cushion, the gun trained downward at a corpse in blue coveralls. She swallowed her nausea and fired again for good measure, greatly relieved that the body prone on the floor failed to react. Then she shoved off from the command pit and circled the area through the other consoles, staggering from the weight and sucking too warm air through a sore throat. She fumbled the oxygen on, felt for the corridor wall, her vision limited by the helmet, got the door open to Sandor's cabin, and used the still-burning suit light to find her way in the dark of it. She cast about for the drawer he had named, pulled open the toiletries drawer under the mirror, and rummaged among the dried-up remnants of some previous tenant. A man, that one. Shoved jars and tubes aside, found it, a slip of paper that her gloved hands could not unfold. She ripped a glove off, found a number. Good luck, he had written along with it. If you've got this, one of 2 things has happened. In either case, take care of her. She blinked, caught by an impulse of guilt, remembered what she was about, then, and what was at stake, and headed out of the cabin, past Neill in the doorway. She went for the bridge, staggering and leaning back in the downward pitch of the deck. Neill followed her, as reckless and reeling. Dierdre had gotten her helmet off and set it on the console and dragged the body out of the way. Allison jerked the other glove off, fought with the helmet catches, and lifted it off. The backpack weighed on her. She started to shed that, and abandoned the thought in her anxiety to get at comp. She bent over the keyboard and keyed the number in. "Hello, Sandy," a voice said, nearly stopping her heart. A menu of functions and code numbers leapt to the screen in front of her. "How are you?" She picked the security function, keyed it through. A list of accesses came to the screen with X's and O's. "Sandy, is there some problem? I can instruct in security procedures if you ask me. In any case, secure the bridge. This is always your last retreat. Stay calm. Always keep food and water on the bridge in case. Keep a gun by you and power down the rest of the sectors if it comes to that." "Lord," Neill muttered, "what's it doing?" "It's right," she decided suddenly, looking about her. "We put the locks on. He's gone, and Curran is, and they've got them out there somewhere. We've got to be sure there's no one left in the holds." The computer went on in its monologue, unstoppable. She keyed the doors closed, one and the other, and took comp back to its listing. "What can I do for you?" it asked. She waited. She stared at the boards, panting under the weight she carried. A wild idea occurred to her that they might all go out onto the docks and try whether some... Oh, jeez. Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. My brain did not pick that up. A wild idea occurred to her that they might all go out onto the docks and try whether some resistance might be left on Venture Station. If they could join up with stationers trying to fight off this intrusion. No, she thought, it was too remote a chance. Too likely to end in a shooting. There were probably Mazianni guards right outside. And the Mazianni would expect to change guards on the ship at some reasonable interval. She kept running through the listings, finance and plumbing and navigation. Customs, one said, and law, and banks, and exchange, and in case, one said. She pushed that one. Sandy, the voice said gently, if you're into this one, the worst has happened, I guess, and of course I don't know where or who, but I love you, Sandy. I'll say that first. And there are several things you can do. I'll lay them out for you. She stopped it with a push of the key, collapsed into the cushion under the weight of the pack, under the weight of shock. Sandy. Sandor. It was indisputable title. To Lucy and what it held.
That was somebody,
Dierdre said.
Lord, Allie, what kind of rig is this?
She started shedding her pack, struggling out of her suit. I don't know, but it's his, Sandor's, and whoever it was thought things through.
They've got him in Curran, Neill said. If we knew where.
Wrong odds, she said. She freed her upper body, stood up, and shed the rest of it. Panting, she settled back again and looked up at them. At both of them. I'll tell you how it is. We hold on to the ship, and if they try to take it, we get ourselves some of them. That's it. They nodded, helmetless both. She loved them, she thought suddenly. Everything had come apart. She had just killed someone, had gotten herself and her crewmates into a situation without exit, a dead end in all senses. Sandor and Curran gone, taken off the ship, lost. Everything had gone foul, everything from the moment she had planned to have her way in the world, and her two cousins stood there, able to have added it all up, and gave her a simple consent, the way Curran had done, and Sandor, for whatever tangled reasons. Her throat swelled, making it painful to swallow. Her mind started working. I'm betting they're still alive, she said. Curran and Sandor, or the Mazianni would have gone at the ship with a cutter. They still reckon to get the ship intact. She reached and punched in on comm, scanning through it, trying to pick up Mazianni transmissions, but there was nothing readable. Only the station pulse continued. False indication of life. She turned on vid as it bore, and it produced a desolate image of a primitive torus, vacant except for the vast bulk of a carrier that breathed near them, and another object that might be yet another freighter docked farther on, indistinct in the dark and the curve of the station.
Got ourselves a target if we wanted to take it, Neill said. Even a creature that size has a sensitive spot about the docking probe.
Might, she agreed. Wonder what the guns are worth. She went for the comp listing, called it up. The voice began, talking in simple terms, advising against starting anything. Shut up, she told it softly. It kept on, relentless, and got then to what the guns were worth, which was not much. But there was that chance, she reckoned. And then she got to reckoning what the bristles were on the frame of the monster next to them, and what that broadside would leave of them and a good section of Venture Station. Don't try to fight, the young man's voice of the computer pleaded with them. Use your head. Don't get into situations without choices. It was late advice. Chapter 17. I told you, Sandor said, I've got no inclination to heroics. You want a deal? I'll deal. It was a tight gathering, that in the cold dockside office. A dozen Maziani, mostly officers, in a dingy, aged facility, heated by a portable unit, with some of the lights burned out, a desk cluttered with printouts.
and burn scars on the walls that spoke of violence here at some point. There was no sign of the former occupants, nothing. He stood across the desk from Edger himself, and Curran was somewhere behind him, back among the guns that kept the odds in this meeting to Edger's liking. "What have you got to deal with?" Edger asked him.
Look, I don't want any trouble. You keep your hands off my ship and off my crewmen.
"Might have need of personnel," Edger said.
No, no deal at all on that. Look, you want cargoes. I'm not particular. You feed me goods and I'll shift 'em where you like. You want some of your own people to go along? Fine.
There was a chair a trooper had his foot in. Sandor gestured at it, looking at Edger.
You mind? Captain to captain, as it were.
Edger made a careless, not quite amused gesture as he captured the chair from the trooper, dragged it over and sat down, leaned on the desk and jabbed a finger onto it amid the papers.
Do I figure right that you've got your sights on Pell? Maybe Mallory's playing your game out there. Maybe you're gonna pull it off.
Mallory.
He sat back a fraction, playing it with a scant flicker, but the hate in Edger's eyes was mortal. So, he thought, having tried that perimeter, play it without principles, all the way. Her cargo aboard, he said. She hauled me in before undock, said she was watching. And she's out there. Overjumped us. Just watching. That's what I know. I'm not particular. You want Mallory's cargo? Welcome to it. And if you want trade done somewhere across the line, I'm willing. But not Pell. Not and answer questions back there. Edger was a mass murderer. So was Mallory. But there was a febrile fixation to Edger's stare that tightened the hairs on his nape. No dockside justice ever promised Edger's kind of dealing.
Suppose we discuss it with your man back there," Edger said.
Discuss what?
"Mallory."
I'll discuss Mallory. I've got no percentage in it.
"Where is Norway?"
Last time I saw her, she was off by James Point.
"Doing what?"
Waiting for something. She's working with Union. That's the rumor. They've got all the null points sewed up, and Union's working with her. So they say. Edger was silent a moment, shifted his eyes to his lieutenant and back again.
"What cargo?"
I don't know what cargo. I didn't want Mallory on my neck. I didn't break any seals.
"Junk, Captain Stevens. Junk. We looked. Recycling goods."
Edger's voice rose and fell again, and Sandor's mind went to one momentary blank. She set me up, he exclaimed. That bastard bitch set me up. She knew what was here and sent me into it. No reaction from Edger. Nothing. The eyes stayed fixed on him, feverish and still, and the noise of his protest fell into that silence and died. Look, I don't know anything. I swear to you. I'm a marginer with legal troubles, and Mallory offered me hazard rate for a haul, offered me a way out and a profit, and she set me up. She bloody well set me up.
"I'm touched, Stevens."
It's the truth.
"It's a setup, Stevens. You're right in that much. Haigler, take a detail and persuade Stevens he's hired. Get that ship working."
Hired for what?
"Don't press your luck, Stevens. You may survive this voyage. If you learn."
A hand descended on his shoulder. He got up, without protest, calculating wildly, to get back aboard again, get sealed in there with a crew, and to take care of them. Allison and her cousins would be there, and there was suddenly a way out. Everyone was moving, the gathering adjourning elsewhere with some dispatch. They were pulling out, he reckoned suddenly. They could not afford to sit at rest if they suspected Mallory was on the loose. A warship out of jump, not dumping its velocity. He did the calculations mentally, fogged in the terror of them, let himself be taken by the arm and steered for the door, a gun prodding him in the back. A ship like Norway could be down their throats scant minutes behind its light-speed bow wave of ID and interference, could blow them out of this fragile, antique shell of a station. There had never been a major settlement here, he surmised.
It was a setup. All of it. All the leaks of routes and trade. And he had not betrayed Mallory. Mallory had primed him with everything she wanted spread to her enemies. Canisters of junk for a cargo. He looked about him as they went out onto the open dock, so chill that breath hung frosted in the air and cold lanced to the bone. They herded him right, at the jab of a rifle barrel, all of them headed out, and he looked back, saw them taking Curran off in the other direction. "Curran!" he yelled. "Hold it! Blast you, my crewman goes with me!" Curran stopped, looked toward him. Sandor staggered in the sudden jerk at his arm, the jab of a rifle barrel into his ribs, kept turning, and hit an armored trooper a blow in the throat that threw the trooper down and sent a pain through his hand. He dived for the gun, hit the floor, rolled in a patter of shots that popped off the decking. The fire hit, an explosion that paralyzed his arm. He kept rolling for the cover of the irregular wall, the gun abandoned in panic. "Move it!" someone yelled. "Get him!" A second shot exploded into his side, and after that was the cold pressure of the deck plates against his face, and a stunned realization that he had just been hit. He heard voices shouting, heard someone order a boarding. "Give up the freighter!" he heard called. "You just shot the bastard and it's no you just shot the bastard and it's no good. Come on." He was bleeding. He had trouble breathing. He lay still until the sounds were done, and that was the best that he knew how to do. Then he lifted his head and saw Curran lying face down on the plates a distance away. He got that far, an inching progress across the ice-cold plates, terrified of being spotted moving. The wounds were throbbing, the left arm refused to move, but he thought that he could have gotten up. And Curran was breathing. He put his hand on Curran's back, snagged his collar and tried to pull him, but it tore his side. Curran stirred then, a feeble movement. "Come on," Sandor said. "Out of the open. Come on. Let's try for the ship." Curran struggled for his feet, collapsed back to one knee, and blood erupted from the burn in his shoulder. Sandor made the same try, discovered he could get his legs under him, offered a hand to Curran, and steadied him, getting up. "Get to cover," he breathed, looking out at all that vacant dock, foreign machinery more than a century outdated, a dark pit of an access. That was Australia back there, 2 berths down, dark and blank to the outside, and Lucy was in the other direction. Lucy. They made it 20 meters along the wall, and then the cold and the tremors got to them both. Sandor hung onto the wall, eased down it finally, supporting Curran and both of them leaning together. "Rest a minute," he said. "They'll blow the station," Curran predicted. "Hard vacuum. Come on, man. Come on." It was Curran hauling him up this time, and they walked as far as they could, but it was a long, long distance to Lucy's berth. Curran went down finally, out of strength, and he was. He held on to the blood-soaked Dubliner, both of them tucked up in the cover of a machinery niche, and stared at what neither one of them could reach. Seals crashed. Australia was loose, preparing for encounter. Sandor went stiff, and Curran did, anticipating the rush of decompression that might take them, but the station stayed whole. Then a second crash of seals. "Allison," Sandor said, and Curran took in his breath. Lucy had prepared herself to break loose. Someone with the comp keys was at controls. "They were wanting an answer," Neill said from comm, turned a sweating face in Allison's direction. "No," Allison said. "Allie, those are guns out there." "They know comp's locked and their men might not answer." No, don't do it.
They're moving,
Dierdre said. Vid came to her screen, a view of a monster warship, the twin of Norway, a baleful glow of running lights illuminating the angular dark surfaces of the frame. Cylinder blinkers began their slow movement as the carrier established rotation.
They've broken communication,
Neill said, and Allison said nothing, waiting, watching, hoping that the behemoth that passed near them would reckon their man's silence a communications lockup, and that they would not, in passing, blow them and the station at once.
Movement our starboard,
Dierdre said, and that image came too. Another ship had been around the rim, and it was putting out.
Freighter type,
Dierdre said.
one of theirs,
Allison surmised. There was a silence for a moment.
Get down there, she said then, and get those port seals complete. We'd better be ready to move. Both of us?
Dierdre asked.
Go.
All the functions came to her board. Her cousins scrambled for the lift back in the lounge that would take them down to the frame. They had to get the seals complete or blow the dock and damage themselves, with no dockside assistance in their undocking. And meanwhile the warship glided past them, while they played dead and helpless. That was a panic move, that. The Mazianni had picked up something on scan. She dared not activate her own, sat taking in only what passive sensors could gather. No output, no visible movement on the exterior, except the minuscule angling of the cameras that she reckoned they would miss. A force left on the docks might have spotted that closure of seals. It might have been better to have done nothing. Might have. She could be paralyzed in might haves. She had two of her own out there. On that ship, on the station, no way of finding that out. It hurt. And there was no remedy to that either. She cleared it out of her mind for the moment, focused finally, functioning as she had not been functioning since somewhere back on Viking. So things were lost. Lives were lost. She had several more to think of, and the captain of that ship out there was her senior in more than years and firepower. No match at all. The only chance was to go unnoticed, to prepare the ship to ride out the destruction of the station as a bit of flotsam, if it happened. If that warship scented something out there, something sudden enough to draw it out, something was loose in Venture's system. Mallory, it might be. She fervently hoped so. The red telltales winked to green, indicating the ports sealed. Dierdre and Neill had gotten them secure. In a moment she heard the working of the lift. Com beeped. She listened. It was the characteristic spit and fade of distant transmission, numerical signal, an arriving ship for sure. She punched it through to comp, flurried through an unfamiliar set of commands. Working, the young man's voice said, familiar sound by now, soothing. The answer came up. Finity's End. Alliance merchanter, headed into ambush. She reached toward the comm, and Vid suddenly lost the movement of the Mazianni warship, a surge of power that for a moment wiped out reception. They moved. Lord, they moved, with eye-tricking suddenness, and her own people were headed across the deck toward her from the lift with no idea what was in progress. If she had the nerve, she would put in comm, give out a warning, and get them all killed. Neihart's Finity just arrived, she said, headed into it. Two bodies hit the cushions and started snatching functions to their own boards without comment. Warn them or not? There was a chance of making a score on the Mazianni if they lay low, of breaking things loose at their own moment, if they could pick it. Their guns were nothing, a pathetic nothing, and Finity had far better than they had. That was a guessable certainty.
Got another one,
Neill said, and then, Allie,
it's Dublin.
the blood went from her face to her feet.
We've got to warn them, Dierdre said.
No, we sit tight.
Allie?
We sit tight.
We've got the Mazianni base. We give Dublin a chance if we can, but we don't tip it premature. What premature? They're headed into a trap. No, she said, desperately. Just no. She had worked it out, all of it, the range they needed, the odds of the troops. Suddenly the balance was tilted. Near 2,000 Dubliners. The Neiharts of Finity might number nearly as many. A name on the Alliance side, armed and not for trifling. They're not dumping, Dierdre said. The way that's coming in, they haven't dumped. Permission to use scan. Do it. The freighters were coming in at all gathered velocity. They knew what they were running into. Allison sat still, clenched her hands together in front of her lips. Scan developed in front of her a scrambled best estimate of the Mazianni position, and that of the merchanters revising itself second by second as Dierdre fought sense out of it. We're moving, she said, and committed them, a release of the grapples and a firing of the undocking jets. Lucy backed off and angled, and she cut mains in, listening to the quiet voice of the ghost in Lucy's comp assure her that she was doing it right. We go for them? Neill asked, an optimistic assessment of their speed and their firepower. Ought to get there eventually, she said. Mark they don't run us down. Just keep our targets straight. She asked Comp for armaments, keying in that function. Sandy, Comp objected, are you sure of this? She keyed the affirmative and uncapped the switches. A distressing red color dyed her hand from the ready light. It was a clumsy system, a computer/scan sync that was decent at low velocities, fit for null-point arguments, but nothing else. Got another one, Neill said, and, Lord, it's Mallory! Her hand shook above the fire buttons. She looked at Scan, a flick of the eye that was in Norway's terms several planetary diameters duration. The garble sorted itself out in calm, and then she saw the angle on Scan. She fired, a flat pressure of her hand, at what she reckoned for the Mazianni's backside, a minuscule sting at a giant with two giant freighters coming on at the Mazianni and its companion, and a carrier of its own class in its wake. Other blips developed, rider ships were deployed. And then something was coming at the pattern broadside. Union ship, she heard reported into her ear. And suddenly everything broke up, sensors out, a wail of alarm through Lucy's systems. It passed. She still had her hand on controls. Hello, Sandy, Comp said pleasantly, sorting itself into sense again. Scan had not. They had ships dislocated from last estimated position. The ID signals started coming in again. That's Dublin, Neill said. Infinity. Norway and her riders. Liberty. That was a Union ship that just passed us. Outbound! Dierdre exclaimed. Lord, they're running! The Mazianni are taking out of there! And that Mazianni freighter's blown! She sat still, with the adrenaline surge still going hot and cold through her limbs, and an alarming tendency to shake. Do we contact? Neill asked. Allie, it's Dublin out there. Put me through, she said, and when she heard the steady calm of Dublin's Calm 1, she still felt no elation. Dublin Calm, this is Lucy. We've got 2 missing. Request help in boarding the station and searching. We copy, Lucy. Not, who is this? Not, hello, Allison Reilly. Ship to ship, and all business. Do you need assistance aboard? Negative. All safe aboard. This is Norway Com, another voice broke in. Ridership Odin will establish dock. Non-military personnel will stay at distance. Repeat. She had cut engines. She rolled Lucy into an axis turn and cut them in again, defying the military order. Let them enforce it. Let Norway put a shot toward them in front of witnesses, after all else Norway had done. She heard objection, ignored it. Dublin, this is Lucy. Request explanation this setup.
Abort that chatter,
Norway said. Hang you, Norway! A rider ship passed them, cutting off communication for the moment, faster than they could possibly move. Norway had followed. Lucy clawed her slow way against her own momentum, and there was a silence over Lucy's bridge, no sense of triumph at all. She had won, and found her size in the universe, that she counted for nothing. Even from Dublin there was no answer.
they've got them.
The report came via Norway com, even while Lucy was easing her way into a troop-assisted dock. And in a little time more,
They're in sorry shape. We're making a transfer to our own medical facilities.
how bad? Allison asked. Norway, Lucy requests information.
When available. Request you don't tie up this station. Norway has other operations.
She choked on that, concentrated her attention on the approaching dock, listened to Dierdre giving range. Norway sat in dock. The Union carrier Liberty was in system somewhere, poised to take care of trouble if the Mazianni had a thought of coming in again. Dublin and Finity moved in with uncommon agility. They can't be hauling, Dierdre said. They came down too fast. Copy that, Allison said, and paid attention to business, smothering the anger and the outrage that boiled up. If I could flip my page. Copy that, Allison said, and paid attention to business, smothering the anger and the outrage that boiled up through her thinking. No merchanter ran empty except to make speed, so Dublin herself had been cooperating with Norway and Union forces. Norway had beaten them out of Pell, and somehow in the cross-ups of real time they had leapfrogged each other, themselves and Norway and Dublin with Neihart's Finity. Norway had known the score here, that much had penetrated her reckonings, and if Dublin had come in empty, it was to make time and gain maneuverability. She had no idea what Dublin could do empty. No one could reckon it, because Dublin has never done the like. For a set of lost Dubliners? She doubted that. The cone loomed ahead. Docking coming up, Sandy, Comp said. She paid attention to that only, full concentration. The first time she had handled docking, and not under the circumstances she had envisioned. Antiquated facilities, a primitive hookup with none of the automations standard with more modern ports. She touched in with the faintest of nudges, exact match. Felt no triumph in that, having acquired larger difficulties. My compliments to the old man, she said to Neill, and I'll be taking with him at the earliest, on the dock. Talking with him, sorry, and I'll be talking with him at the earliest, on the dock. Neill's eyes flickered with shock in that glance at her. Then they went opaque, and he nodded.
Right.
She shut down. Dublin's coming in, Dierdre said. Finity's getting into sync. She unbelted. I'll be seeing about a talk with the old man. I think we were used, cousins. I don't know how far, but I don't like it. Yes, ma'am, Dierdre said. She got up, thought about going out there as she was, sweaty, disheveled. We'll be delivering that body to Norway, she said, or venting it without ceremony. Advise them.
Got that.
Neill said. Her cabin was marginally in reach with the cylinder and downside dock. She made it, opened the door on chaos, hit by a wave of icy air. The cabin was piled with bundles lying where maneuvers and G had thrown them, not only hers, but everyone else's. Clothes jammed everywhere, personal items strewn about. She waded through debris to reach her locker, found it stripped of her clothes and jammed with breakables. She saw them in her mind, Curran and Sandor both, taking precautions while they were in the process of being boarded, fouling up the evidence of other occupancy, as if this had been a storage room. And they had kept to that story, as witnessed their survival. as witness their survival, all riding on two men's silence. She hung there, holding to the frame of the door, still a moment. Then she worked her way back out again, down the pitch of the corridor to the bridge.
Dublin requests you come aboard,
Neill said. All right, she said mildly, quietly, at my convenience. I'm headed for Norway.
They won't let you in.
Maybe not. Shut down and come with me.
Right,
Dierdre said, and both of them shut down the moment. And both of them shut down on the moment and got up. Down the lift to the lock. Norway troops were standing guard on the dock when they had gone out into the bitter cold. 3 battered merchanters in sweat-stained coveralls. There was a thin scattering of movement beside that, a noise of loudspeakers and public address, advising stationers in hiding to come to dockside or to call for assistance. Men and women as haggard as themselves, in work clothes, came out to stand in lines the military had set up, to go to desks and offer papers and identifications.
poor bastards, Neill muttered. No good time for them, in all this.
She thought about it, the situation of stationers with Mazianni in charge. They were very few, even so. A maintenance crew. There were no children in evidence, and there would have been if it had been a station in full operation. All young, all the same look to them.
Yo! An armored trooper shouted at them. IDs!
Allison stopped, Dierdre and Neill on either side of her. Allison Reilly, she said, and the rifle aimed at them went back into rest.
Papers!
Papers, the trooper said, and she presented them. We've got 2 of ours in Norway Medical Section, she said. I'm headed there. The trooper handed the papers back, faceless in his armor.
Got the Lucy crew here, he said to someone else. Requesting boarding.
And a moment later, a nod to that unheard voice.
One of you is clear to board. Officer on duty will guide you.
Thanks, Allison said. She glanced at Neill and Dierdre, silent communication, then parted company with them, walked the farther distance up the docks to the access of Norway. Another trooper, another challenge, another presentation of papers. She walked the ramp into the dark metal interior without illusions that Mallory had any interest in talking to her after what they had done. She was an inconsequence, with her trooper escort and the corridor traffic, came virtually unremarked to the doorway of the medical section. An outbound medic shoved into her in his haste, and she flattened herself against the doorway, gathering her outrage and fright. A second brush with traffic, a medic on his way in. Where's the Lucy personnel? She asked, but the man brushed past. Hang out! She thrust her way into a smallish area, and a medic made a wall of himself.
Captain's request, the trooper escorting her said. Condition of the Lucy personnel. This is next of kin.
The medic focused on her as if no one until now had seen her.
Transfused and resting, no lasting damage.
They might have been machinery. The medic waved them for the door.
Got station casualties incoming. Out.
She went, blind for the moment, was shaking in the knees by the time she walked Norway's ramp down to the dockside and headed herself toward Dublin. The troopers stayed. She went alone across the docks, with more anger than she could hold inside. Megan met her at the lock, had been standing there, no knowing how long. She looked at her mother a moment without feeling anything, a simple analysis of a familiar face, a recognition of the heredity that bound her irrevocably to Dublin. Her mother held out her arms. She reacted to that and embraced her, turned her face aside. You all right? Megan asked when they stood at arm's length. You set us up. Megan shook her head. We knew Norway had. We shed it all. We knew where Finity was bound, and we put out with 'em. Part of the operation. They gave you false cargo, mass, but nothing. And you hewed the line and played it honest, but it wouldn't have made a difference. Mallory gave you what she wanted noised about, and sent you in here primed with everything you were supposed to spill. If you were boarded, if they searched, they'd know you were a setup. But all you could tell them was what Mallory wanted told. The rage lost its direction, lost all its logic. She was left staring at Megan with very little left in reserve. We were boarded, didn't Dierdre and Neill say? But we got them off. Curran and Stevens. They're all right. Everything's fine. She fought a breath down and put a hand on Megan's shoulder. Come on. Dierdre and Neill aboard? With the old man. Right, she said, and walked with her mother to the lift, through Dublin's halls, past the staring, silent faces of cousins and her own sister. Connie, she said, and took her sister's hand, embraced her briefly. Connie was more pregnant than before, a merchanter's baby, pregnancy stretched into more than 9 months of real time, a life already longer and thinner than stationers' lives, to watch stationers age while it grew up slowly, with a merchanter's ambitions. Because they're dealing with relativity. She let her sister go, walked on with Megan into the lift, and topside, down the corridor that led to the bridge. She was qualified there, she realized suddenly, might have worn the collar stripe, posted crew to a Dublin associate, and it failed to matter. She walked onto the bridge where Michael Reilly sat his chair, where Dierdre and Neill stood as bedraggled as herself and answered for themselves to the authority of Dublin. Mam was there, and Jeff, and operations crew, busy at Dublin running. Allison, the old man said, rose and offered his hand. She took it, slump-shouldered and leaden in the moment, her sweat-limp hair hanging about her face as theirs did. Her crew, her companions, both of them. You all right? All right, sir. There wasn't a way to warn you, just to back you up. You understand that? I understand it, sir, Megan said. Small ship, the old man said, and expendable. That's the way they reckoned it. He gestured toward the bench near his chair. She folded her hands behind her, locked her aching knees. Won't stay long, she said. You won't have to have it that way. The Riley sat down. You can turn your post over to second helm. Take a leave. You're due that. She sucked at her lips. No, sir. My crew can speak for themselves, but I'll stay by Lucy. Same, sir, Dierdre said, and there was a like murmur from Neill. They owe us, she said. They promised us hazard rate for what we're hauling, and I'm going to Mallory to collect it. The Riley nodded. Maybe he approved. She took it for dismissal, collected her crew. You can use Dublin facilities, the old man said. Durin dock. We'll help you with any sorting out you needed. We'll help you with any sorting out you need to do. She looked back. Courtesy or on charge? Courtesy, the old man said. No charge on it. She walked out, officer of a small ship, a poor relation come to call. A poor relation come to call. Much better. Dubliners lined the corridor, stared at her and her companions, and there was something different. She did not bother to reason what it was, or why cousins stared at them without speaking, with that bewilderment in their eyes. She was only tired, with more on her mind than gave her time for politeness. Chapter 18. Dublin was in port. He had earned that much. He had heard that much, when they took Curran out and left him behind, among the station wounded. He lay and thought about that, putting constructions together in his mind, none of which made particular sense, only that somewhere, as usual lately, he had been conned. So there was a reason Dublin had handed out a paper 500,000, and Norway had landed on the case of a petty skimmer with customs problems. He had pursued his fate till it caught him, that was what. Allison. All of Lucy's crew was safe.
They had told him that, too, and he was glad, whatever else had happened. He had no personal feeling about it. Or did, but he had no real expectation that Allison would come down into the depths of Norway to see him. He made a fantasy of such a meeting, but she failed to come, and that fit with reality, so he enjoyed the fantasy and finally stopped hoping. He was, before they took out the station casualties, a kind of hero. At least to the few men next to him, who had gotten him confused with the captains of ships like Dublin and Finity's End, and, he had heard, even the Union ship Liberty, who had done the liberating of their station. Mostly Norway. Mostly the tough, seasoned troops of the Alliance carrier had invaded the halls and routed out what pockets of Mazianni remained holding stationer hostages. The same troops had found him holding Curran, trying to keep him from bleeding to death, which was how he had spent the battle for Venture Station, crouched down in a small spot and confused about who was fighting whom. The gratitude embarrassed him, but it was better than admitting what he really was, and fighting a silent war across the space between cots, so he took it with appropriate modesty. It was someone to talk to, until they moved the stationers out. "When do I get out?" he asked, hoping he was going to. "Tomorrow," the medic promised him, whether or not that came from official sources. He was not in the habit of believing official promises, and he was trying to sleep the next morning after breakfast when the medic came to ask him if he could walk out or if he had to have a litter. "Walk," he decided. "Got friends waiting for you." "Crew?" "So I understand." He took the packet the medic tossed down, his own shaving kit, a change of clothes. So they had come. He was heartened in spite of himself, reckoned that somehow it had turned up convenient in Dublin's books. It got him out of Norway. That much. He shaved with the medic's help, no easy trick with one arm immobilized. Got dressed. "Here," the medic said, stuffing a paper into his pocket. "That's the course of treatment. You follow it. Hear me?" He nodded, only half interested. A trooper showed up on call to take him out. "Thanks," he told the medic, who accepted that with a dour attention, and he left with the trooper. "Gotta walk slow," he told the woman, who adjusted her pace to suit. It was not a far walk, not as far as it might have been on something Norway's size. He came down the lift and out the lock, taking it as slowly as reasonable, only half light-headed. It actually, as a brief aside, it does actually make sense for a vessel like Norway to have medical facilities probably pretty close to a docking hatch in order to take people back in and get them healed up if they've boarded a station. And they were there, Allison, Dierdre, Neill, and Curran at the foot of the ramp. He went down and met offered hands, took Curran's. "You all right?" he asked Curran. "Right enough," Curran said, embraced him carefully with a hand on his sound shoulder, looked at him with that kind of gratitude the stationer had had, which he took in the same understanding. "Allison," he said then, and took her hand. A forlorn pain went through him, a flicker of the dark eyes. "Well, you did it right, Reilly, top to bottom. Must have." "I should have come after you," she said. "I didn't know you were on the dock." "Then how could you? No way. It worked, didn't it?" "Got us all in one piece." "I'm usually right." He touched Dierdre's arm and took Neill's hand, looked back at Allison and saw a trooper beckon. "Captain's waiting," the trooper said, waved a hand toward the dockside offices. "Mallory," Allison said. He nodded. His heart had turned over. He started that way. At least it was not far across the dock, the same office, the place of recent memory. He felt numb in the cold and no little disoriented. "Dublin's in on the conference," Allison said. "The old man, our legal counsel. You've got that behind you." "Good to know," he said. "You don't believe it." "Course I believe it. You say so." "Course I believe it. You say so."
She gave him one of those looks as they went into the office, into a gathering thick with military in blue and merchanters in silver and white. Repeat scene, only it was Mallory behind the desk, and Tally close by her, one of the breed exchanged for the other. One of the breed exchanged for another. "Captain." "Captain," she said, a courteous nod. He paid her one in return. He looked further about him, noted the patches. Dublin's shamrock on the silver, and on the white. The arrogant black sphere of Finity's End, a name so old they had no insignia at all. And Rejuve's silvered hair other than Mallory's, a gathering of senior officers in which one Sandor Kreja would have been a small interest. Give or take a bogus cargo and 500,000 credits. "Wanted to straighten the matter out with you," she said. "Need a chair, Captain?" No. An automatic no, half regretted, but no one else was seated but Mallory. He refused to be the center of things along with her, but he was. He reckoned that. "Any time you change your mind," she said, "feel free. It's really not fair to call you in like this, but Norway's prone to sudden departures, and I'm sure others don't want to log too much dock time. Are you sure about the chair, Captain?" He nodded. A small trickle of sweat started down the side of his face. Small talk was not Mallory's style. He disliked it. Them. This whole gathering. He disliked it, them, this whole gathering. Much better. "You played it straight," she said. "I'd rather hoped you might, Captain, but I was a little surprised by it." "You were a little late." He recovered his sense of balance, pulse rate getting up again. "You took our arrival rate. You cut it pretty long on our side." She shrugged, passing off the wounds and the deaths on station. "You bettered your rate by a few hours, didn't you?" He thought back then, through the fog of real time, the haste they had used through the second jump. Allison in command and mutiny on the bridge. The anger went out of him. "Maybe we did," he said. "We were on time, absolutely. But you managed well enough. Tell me, did you tell them where to find me?" "I reckoned you meant me to. You don't set much store by heroes, do you?" Mallory laughed. It surprised him, that quick, cold humor. "Land on your feet, do you? No, I didn't expect it." "So I spilled all I knew and invented some. But I'll trust you're going to stand by our agreement." "On what, Captain?" "Hazard rate. On military cargo." She thought a moment. Wondering, he thought. "I didn't breach the seals," he said, "but they did. And they knew I was a plant. That wasn't comfortable." "No, I dare say not." She turned over some papers on her desk. "Vouchers for the pay you're due. No dock charge at venture, under the circumstances. Let's treat it as life support freight." Mallory had, he thought, a certain sense of humor. He was going to get out of this. He was insanely tempted to like Mallory, in sheer gratitude. "Captain," he said. Thanks stuck in his throat. "That's an interesting rig, your ship." She failed to let go of the papers, and he let go of them in a sudden chill, cursing his momentary trust. "Everything under lock, papers of clouded origin, backing from one of Union's major names. You know there was a time, Captain, I wondered about Dublin itself, keeping your company." "We don't take that," a Dublin officer said.
"Oh, I'm assured otherwise. Our allies from across the line vouch for you. But you have odd associates. Tell me, Captain Reilly, what motive to lend to a marginer on that scale?"
"Private business."
"I don't doubt."
She offered the papers a second time. Sandor took them, his fingers gone cold. He wanted to sit down. The room proved hot/cold and confused with sound.
"Your papers, Captain, are altered. Do you know that?"
He blinked, felt the edge of the desk with his fingertips, tried to summon up his wits. That's not so.
And you run gold under the plates.
Private store, my own property. I expect it to be there when I board. Mallory considered him slowly.
Of course it is.
If you ran that thorough a search on Pell,
We wondered.
that's under Dublin finance, Allison said from behind him.
The papers say that too. We're good for any debts.
He looked around slowly at the Dubliners, at Curran's sweating, pale face, and Allison's flushed one, Dierdre and Neill unfocused behind them. The rest of the room blurred. They had it, he reckoned. The keys and the excuse. He made a small shrug and looked around again at Mallory. That's the way the papers are set up.
I know that too. As long as Dublin stands good for it.
No question, Reilly said. He tucked the voucher into his pocket, finding about all the strength he had gathered deserting him. He could make it back to Lucy, he reckoned, if he got that far. He wanted that, just to get home, however long it lasted.
You want to let me see the aforementioned papers, Captain?
He felt in his pocket, of the jacket draped about his shoulder on the left, fumbled the packet out, and gave it into Mallory's hand.
They are faked, she said, rifling through them. Pell caught that. Paper analysis didn't match. Good job, though. They're going to go over to disk on this kind of thing. It's going to put a lot of paper traders out of business. Some merchanters howl at the prospect, but then some have reason, don't they? You really ought to get that title straightened up.
She offered them back. He took them, blind to anything else.
That ought to be all, she said. Dublin vouches for you. And Union, to be sure, vouches for Dublin, so we don't ask any more questions.
Can I go? She nodded, dark eyes full of surmises. He kept his face neutral, turned about, and walked out, in the company of Allison and her crew, unasked. Allison put herself in front of him, and he stopped outside, dizzy and none too steady on his feet.
Get it clear, she said. Dublin's with us. They won't do anything. You can clear the name up, go by your own, you understand that? You can get the papers cleared.
Maybe I don't want to.
For what? Who is it that recorded the comp messages? It's you he talks to, isn't it? Who was he?
He looked at the decking, across the dock, at the scant foot traffic, at the overhead where lonely nights gave the dock what illumination it had. You want to talk about it? Curran asked. Not particularly.
Brother?
Allison asked. He shrugged. Might have been.
He set it up, Allison said, for somebody who really didn't know how to run a ship, to teach everything there was. It must have taken him a long time to do that. I figure he must have thought a lot about your being able to take care of yourself.
None of your business.
We're not welcome there, are we?
He thought a moment about that one. You coming back? He asked, looking at her. Or do they send me a new set of Dubliners for the run back?
We're coming back, she said. You know we know how to work comp, do everything. We're pretty good.
It was about the humblest he was likely to get out of Allison Reilly, and it set him off his balance again. I know you're pretty good, he said, shrugged it off. Looked up, then, at her and the others, one face and the other. Excuse me, he said, and walked back into the office and others' business. Aides moved, rifles swung fractionally in the hands of guards. Mallory's face had an uncommon degree of wariness. It's Kreja, he said, feeling the presence of Allison and the others close at his back. He took his papers from his pocket, another tiny movement of the rifles which had not quite given up their focus. Lesignan and Kreja. Maybe I ought to get the papers straightened out. Whoa, my entire mouth just mangled that. I apologize. Lesignan and Kreja. Maybe I ought to get the papers straightened out. Mallory looked up at him curiously.
Is it? And how do you come by that name? It's a long time out of circulation.
He wondered in that moment, decided in the negative. Mallory's puzzlement seemed for once other than a mockery.
I was born with it, he said. I'd like it back.
Mallory settled back in her chair, a hand on her desk.
Not a difficult matter. Paris, was it? That was a time ago.
Breath failed him.
Would you know what happened?
I heard what happened.
He believed that. Mallory was trustable. In some degree. He believed that much.
Give me the papers,
she said, and when he laid them on the desk she simply took them and wrote in longhand.
Le Signal. Name of owner?
Sandor Kreja. The pen flourished and stopped. She handed the papers back. The corrections were there. S. Mallory was written below, amended by her authority.
Kreja.
Oh, sorry, that's a Reilly. Kreja. A hand was offered him from his right. One of the Reillys, the Reilly, had heard. He had heard him answer. He took the hand, suffered the friendly pressure, escaped then past the door in his own company. That's straight, he said. He pocketed the papers, along with the voucher, walked a fragile course toward Lucy/Lesigna's dock, with his Dubliners about him. Going to have to go out on the hull when we get time. Do a name change.
Not much chance of getting cargo here, Allison said, but hazard rate ought to cover it both ways.
Game for another run?
They're keeping military watch on the whole line for the time being, so the rumor runs.
Nice to pick up rumors. I'm not sure I believe all of them.
I figure they'll hold by this one.
They reached the access. It was about the limit of his strength and Curran's, who was out of breath as he was going up the ramp. A young Dubliner plastered himself against the wall of the lock as they came in with a quick, "Sir? Ma'am?" And Sandor gave the boy a dazed and misgiving stare as his own Dubliners pulled him past. "I didn't clear any borders," he said, finding more of them by the lift. "Hang it, Reilly!"
"Borrowed help," Allison said.
The corridor was clean. The inside of the lift car was clean, spit and polish.
Young Dubliners wanted some exercise.
The lift let them out in the lounge bridge area. Scrubbed decks, polished panels, every smudge and smear and tarnish cleared away. It looked new again, except for the tape patches on the upholstery. "You cleaning her up to take possession?" he asked outright.
"No," Allison said.
"Can't touch anything without fingerprinting it."
"That's fine. It's old habits."
He looked back at them standing there, reckoned how the place would feel without them. Nodded then. "Looks like she used to," he admitted, and turned back and walked onto the bridge. She went out, Lesigna did, with empty holds, moving lightly as she could in that condition. Jump talked to them, commending them the way they had got it right.
"Jump coming up, Sandy. Find your referent."
"Got it," Allison said from number 2 post, talking back to Comp and to him, and the numbers came up on the screen. The checks came in from the others, routine matters. They headed for Pell, for station cargo this time, and reckoned Dublin would pass them on the way. There was a bet on, inside Lesigna, about elapsed time and drinks when they got there. He reckoned to win it, knowing his ship. But it was all one account, anyway. And that was Merchanter's Luck by C.J. Cherry. That is a good one. That's definitely one of my favorites, mostly because it is so beautifully self-contained, such a great little microcosm, and it makes for a really good actiony, a kind of actiony book. Pretty fast-paced. A lot happens. Really nice emotional ending there, where he comes back to his vessel and the Dubliners have all scrubbed and cleaned it up. I would kill. I would love for there to be like a movie of this. This would be the easiest thing in the world to make a movie of.
um, and just do it straight the way it as written. I don't think it would be hard to do. You'd be missing a ton of context, but you don't need it, in my opinion. Um, Admittedly, some of the written context kind of gives you additional internal context, so that wouldn't be present. Uh, but yeah, no, everything basically coming up roses other than getting shot. Sandor reclaims his name. He reclaims his ship's name, his family name. The implication is that Mallory is not in fact the one who did the piracy on his ship. It isn't. I don't think it's absolutely certain that it was Edger. Um, it wasn't Mallory in any case. So Mallory, despite being basically a warlord in her past life, she's a good guy. She's decidedly one of the good guys uh, for purposes of people in Sandor Sandor's position, um, or anyone from Alliance, the Merchanters Alliance. She's decidedly turned over a new leaf. So it's pretty great. It makes for a solid near proximity sequel to Down Below Station. Another one that's pretty close that I would kind of like to get to is Rim Runners, I believe it is. Can I see it from here? No, it's just in the lee of Hellburner. I can't quite see it. I believe it's Rim Runners, um, and that one is a bit different. There is some conceptual overlap. Uh, we have a very different protagonist, and yet they're also very similar in many ways, and that will become clear when we get around to it. Speaking of getting around to it, that could be a while. I'm not going to start it in the next 2 weeks, just because I won't have time to finish it. And then there'll be like a 2 week, 2 odd week gap while I'm not around. Um, yeah, I don't remember which day I leave. Friday the 1st, I should still be here. If I'm not, I'll know that week. Um, Tentatively, we'll get started on that the week of the 18th or the 20th, August 20th. We'll get around to starting Rim Runners. Um, Very different protagonist there, and yet kind of a similar situation. You'll see what I mean. Um, it's been a while since I've read that one too, so I hope I'm remembering the right book. I think I am. Yeah, I wouldn't be picking it if I weren't. Anyway, yeah, no, I adore Merchanter's Luck. I think it's very fun. Um, I'm not sure if it's my favorite work by C.J. Cherryh, at least in this setting. It is certainly in my top five, probably in my top three. I think on balance, I still like Cytine a little better, um, largely because it was in many ways my formal introduction to C.J. Cherryh. And there's a lot of mind-blowing stuff that happens there. It's not dramatic in scope, but it is kind of dramatic in character interaction. And there's some politicking that goes on that's pretty interesting and very well rendered, in my opinion. Um, I had read some books, at least one book by C.J. Cherryh before reading Cytine, but I cannot honestly remember which one it was. Um, I want to say it might have been Serpent's Reach, but I can't remember for sure. Um, but yeah, so right now, for Wednesdays anyway, I want to build toward getting around to Cytine. In order to do that, so reading Rim Runners isn't mandatory for doing that, but I kind of want to do it as kind of additional fleshing out of what's the verse like immediately after or shortly after um, Down Below Station, and then read 40,000 at Gehenna, sorry, 40,000 in Gehenna, which is also in the same volume that I have. It's collected with Merchanter's Luck. Um, and that will give us an idea of so what is this union thing after anyway? What are these union people? How do they go about things? How are things structured there? Part of me thinks I should probably do Serpent's Reach as well. I'll think about it. I have to reread Serpent's Reach because it has been a very long time since I've read that. That one I seem to recall being very similar to 40,000 in Gehenna. I swear to God, if these friggin' bots asking for cheap viewers on some website on Twitch don't stop, I don't know what I'll do. Another one added to the block list. Bam! He's gone. It's gone. Anyway, hopefully people enjoyed. CJ Cherry, as ever, is a difficult one to read aloud. You have to be in this very specific mindset. Um, she is easy for me to get tripped up on because she does not structure her sentences and whatnot in a way that people typically do. It's very, very in the moment. It's very subtexty. Oh, that's right. 40,000 in Gehenna has maps. I need to get those. Ooh. Let me see real quick if those are readily available on the Webernets. 40,000 in Gehenna maps. All right, there's at least one. But I think there are three in the book, so I've got to... Oh, geez, and there's a genealogy? I'll see if I can find those. That might be doable. Anyway, 40,000 in Gehenna is a weird one. Like, it's pretty wild. There's a lot going on there. Um, Suffice it to say, it is mostly a story about colonization. It is mostly a story about taming the land, as it were. Um, yeah, there's some pretty killer covers for this too. But it's also a story about social changes and how different people can live in different ways. We'll get there. We'll get there. That's going to be a while yet before we get to that. Um, so after this Friday, when we should be finishing up Death's End by Shishin Liu, after this Friday, the next 2 weeks or so, I'll try and find some variety of things to do. It might be short stories, it might be other things, but I have a new/old microphone that I was able to dig up that I'm going to be putting through its paces. And we'll see if that has better audio quality than the one I'm currently using. And most of the fiddling is going to be with me trying to get into a position so that I can use it easily and comfortably, and that it works well, and so that I know, oh, it's not working now. So the more people tuning in, the more helpful that will be, so that they can tell me what I am doing, right and wrong. Anyway, with that, this was a very short one, I know. With that, though, I think we will have to call it good. I'm trying to think of the. So, yeah, basically, what Merchanter's Luck does is it establishes this is what the status quo looks like. The former. What are they called? The Hinder Stars, which are There's a string of stations going outward from Saul that were essentially abandoned once Pell became independent. Once Pell became functional, basically, because he was able to provide biomaterials and planet-bound things. that Earth was previously providing, but now no longer needed to, and so Union's getting all that stuff from not Earth, but from Pell. Um, and then you have the lead up into um, the events of Down Below Station. So, in the wake of the events of Down Below Station, the Hinder stars are basically being redeveloped. We are entering what will be known as the era of rapprochement. Um, rapprochement, not reproach, but rapprochement. Spelled rapprochement. Something like that. I've probably misspelled that, but it's okay. Um, and that's basically so everybody, Union, Sol, and the Merchanters Alliance are now basically like, okay, we're going to ease back on this war thing. It's not profitable. The Merchanters Alliance is like, okay, we're asserting ourselves. We're saying we're not going to be used by anybody. We're going to be um, our own force in the universe with our own rights, and incidentally, our own military um, to defend ourselves with. And so the Hinder stars are going to be redeveloped to get a trade corridor going with Earth, and from there, we kind of just have that's sort of where things are developing out to. It's 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 a much more measured expansion because Union is no longer expanding in all directions and colonizing absolutely everything in sight, which is what they had been doing. We're going to see some of the reasons why they've had to slow down on that um, by the time we get to Cytine. Mostly in Cytine is where we're going to see that. Uh, Things will be explained. Um, Union is pretty fascinating. They are an interesting society. They're both familiar and very different at the same time. You will know when we get there. And yeah, the Mazianni are still just floating around doing their thing. Um, we don't get confirmation that Edger is taken out here. So Thomas Edger is at least still around. Trying to remember what happened to Pori. If Pori went with Mazian or not. Or did Pori stick with Norway? I can't remember now. My brain is foggy right this moment. On that, Mazian certainly, Mazian and Edger for sure went towards Earth, Sol. But they kind of get cut off and prevented from turning it into their own little fiefdom, because Norway and the Merchant Alliance and Union all basically gang together and are like, we're not having it. It's not happening. It could possibly be surmised that this action of the action that occurs in Merchanter's Luck is part of that getting the jump on them. But I think it's mostly that they've been cut off and had to just the various Maziani ships have had to dip in all directions and aren't really able to communicate and are their own little pirate bandits of their pirate ships sailing the seas. Um, they take what they can get and then they steal what they can get and then plunder and move on, just trying to stay afloat. And this does involve conscripting people, which they were already doing before the events at Down Below Station, uh, and now more of that. Anyway, I'm going to cease my rambling immediately. This Friday, again, we'll be finishing up Death's End by Shijin Liu. I will try to get the rundown on what happened to make it so that it was a single volume instead of two volumes. But if I can't, I can't. I'll try to find out how, though. Anyway, I will leave you all to it. Thanks to everyone who tuned in. There were a bunch of you. Um, CJ Cherry is great. I apologize to her that I can't do these
quite the justice that I'd like to. Um, when I say she's challenging to read, I mean that as a compliment. I'm trying to think of what I can do after this week that I can just bang out in like 3 to 6 sessions. Um, I could feasibly do. Oh, what's the name of that book? It's so good. It's so entertaining, but I can't remember its title. That's embarrassing. Suffice it to say, it's basically Eurovision in space. In space, everyone can hear you sing. That's not the title. That's the tagline, but I can't remember the name of the book. I've got it. It's like just out of my line of sight. I know where I have it on my wall, but I can't get it this second. Um, it's pretty entertaining. It's it's very Douglas Adams. Um, anyway, and it's fairly short, so I could feasibly bang it out in like 6 installments. Anyway, as I am testing as I test the microphone, which I won't be getting to till after this Friday, just for continuity's sake. That way, the quality doesn't abruptly shift in the middle of a book or towards the end of a book. I do things for reasons. They're not always good ones. All right, with that, I will see you all later. Stay safe, stay sane, be decent to each other, and good golly, if you are a part of any of these heat waves, stay cool. Um, if you're on the West Coast, or actually anywhere now, if you're in Manitoba, uh, don't get set on fire. Hence the stay safe part. Anyway, until next time,